As I'm sure many of you are aware, there is a massive multiplayer patch going live for StarCraft 2 in just a couple of weeks after the World Championship Series wraps up at BlizzCon. And over the last couple of weeks, I have been playing the balanced test map for quite a significant amount of time already. Now, they are still constantly tweaking all of the numbers and they're still making a slight adjustments every now and then. But all things considered, it does look like we are getting rather close to a very viable version of StarCraft 2 that, in my opinion, is already looking far better than the current version of StarCraft 2, which I, absolutely love. Now, one of the main changes, in particular for Protoss, is the removal of the Mothership Core. As I'm sure many of you are aware, the Mothership Core is essentially one of the most crucial units in the early game for Protoss players, and now it has been replaced with a little building known as the Shield Battery. Now, the Shield Battery has gone through a couple of different iterations already. It is meant as a defensive structure, but because I'm a StarCraft nerd and because I really like testing out new strategies, I figured what would happen if I go ahead and use the Shield Battery offensively instead. Now, if you are a Zerg player, I think I've got 2 games for you today. Both of them are against a Zerg player. I would highly recommend you close your eyes by the time the engagement hits, because this is probably one of the dirtiest strategies that I have ever played in StarCraft 2, and it honestly seems nearly unstoppable. So I'm going up right here against a higher level Zerg player, and I'm just simply scouting about, right? Now, of course, what I have done, which we could have seen, of course, by just simply checking my vision out, I have indeed planted down 3 gateways pretty far away from my opponent's base, right? I figured this is like the 4th or so attempt that I'm trying this one out. I figured that I may as well go ahead and put them down in a location where the Zerg player will most definitely not be scouting. Because the idea right here, for me, is to go ahead and build up a bunch of gateways, start chrono boosting out as many zealots as possible, and then put up a couple of shield batteries when my opponent is not paying attention. And if your opponent does not recognize immediately what's going on, right? And usually they won't really be able to see this until the first shield battery is already, halfway or so from finishing. If they don't realize exactly what's going on and the zealots are coming in, it is going to be an extremely tough hold. Now, as it is in Legacy of the Void right now, this is a build that's pretty strong, right? With the gateway proxy cheese. A lot of Protoss players do indeed opt to go for example, 3 to 4 gateways even. But if you add to that the shield battery, it's essentially a build order that seems almost unstoppable. If the hatchery on the low ground finishes, it is extremely difficult for a player to try and counter this. So the way that the shield battery works is that indeed I can send the zealots back towards the shield batteries and recharge their shields. So right now, I'm chrono boosting out a couple of zealots all at once. I'm trying my very best to get a couple of shield batteries going. Now, I do have to be careful that I don't get surrounded all too much here either. Of course, using hold position to try and get as close to this engagement as I can. But by just simply moving these zealots back towards the shield batteries, their shields are getting recharged, and they are immediately once again ready to go back into the battle. And this seems to be a strategy. I've had a couple of people execute it against me as well, that if you do not scout it before the hatchery finishes up, you're essentially dead. You can't stop it if you go for very quick roaches after you realize what's going on and you just simply put down a roach warren after canceling your own hatchery. But other than that, it's an extremely tough build that honestly seems a little bit too strong. I've tried a couple of different variations of it. 4-gate zealots seems to be viable as well. Of course, you get a couple of, shield batteries less, but it still seems to work out just fine. You can pull it off with a cybernetics core as well and just simply start making stalkers, which coincidentally have also been changed up. And essentially, there are a wide variety of proxy styles with Protoss that are extremely dirty, that are extremely hard to stop right now as well. Now, I just wanted to show you another example of a game where it doesn't work out nearly as perfectly. However, even though my opponent scouts roughly what's going on and I am mis-microing quite heavily, I still get a very solid game going and it's still a relatively clean victory. The cool part about this, at the very least from the Protoss player's point of view, is that there is still a lot of room for optimization, right? So in these games, I'm sending out my probe right from the get-go and I'm immediately putting down a pylon in the center of the map. But I'm sure it's going to be viable to, for example, start this up a little bit later, or to maybe, squeeze out just a couple more probes, or to maybe even start up a wall at the bottom of the natural and just simply rally zealots across the map from there. I wouldn't be surprised if that is going to be possible, in particular on some of these smaller maps in StarCraft 2. Now, of course, the map pool and whatnot will continuously change as well, but Catalina, I mean, it's a 3-player map. It's still gonna work out just fine. In this particular one, I decided to put the gateways in the center of the map. When you think about it, a Zerg's Overlord, they're not really gonna, a Zerg Overlord is not gonna really fly past the center of the map at this point in the game. They're sending them to the other spawn locations as well, and this turns out to be perfectly viable once again. So, in the games that I've played so far, right, I've been primarily focusing on the Zealots, but like I mentioned, it is totally doable to go ahead and follow it up with Stalkers as well, which seems really good in particular against Terran, because of course they can lift buildings, and now with the new Stalker that shoots a little bit slower but also hits a little bit harder, you can actually micro very, very nicely. So in this particular case, my opponent is indeed going hatch gas pool. I once more did put up a pylon inside of the main base, and by the time that this pylon finishes, I mean, I'm putting it down in a way where I'm essentially shielding the pylon itself with the shield batteries. If you put them down just like this, it becomes very tough for a Zerg player to stop. So right now, Rayon, my opponent, does end up scouting it rather early on. He decides to pull a couple of the workers, but here's the thing about these shield batteries, and this is something that I didn't really realize myself for a long time. They build faster and get more HP than a photon cannon. At the very least, they are, you know, tankier and more tough to kill than a what is it called? A photon cannon. And here's what makes it even dirtier. Besides the fact that the shield batteries can heal up units, which is on autocast right here, they can actually heal each other up as well. So say, for example, my opponent comes out, right? And he's gonna try and, you know, just simply push in right here and do as much damage as possible with the units that he's got. And for example, he goes after the shield batteries or the pylons for that matter. I can just simply use the other shield batteries or, you know, any of the other structures that I've got nearby to heal up the shield batteries themselves, or to just simply heal up the pylons themselves as well, which is awfully strong. Like right now, for example, it isn't on autocast, so it takes a little bit of time to get it started. But the fact of the matter is that this is a very tough strategy to stop just because you can continuously heal up. Now, in some maps, right, like for example this one, it's a bit tricky to properly try and close it out. However, in my experience, I mean, there is a lot of room for improvement here still. Usually, initially, it doesn't look like you're in that great of a position. For example, right now, it does look like I'm gonna end up getting overwhelmed here very shortly. And even though I'm mispositioning my my pylon there, and I'm also not really, you know, making optimal use here of my zealots, and you know, my shield batteries get underpowered and all that, my opponent is just continuously producing units, but still, he does not quite have enough momentum to really try and close this one out. He's got a shield battery, or rather, he's got a spine crawler as well, poking away at all of these units, but I'm just continuously sending units across the map, trying to recreate that pylon. Since the previous one was not quite in range for me to heal it up, you know, I ended up losing the pylon right here in the front. But regardless, there's a lot of potential here and a lot of room for optimization that can only make this build order stronger over time. Now, I think there are a couple of ways that could go ahead and prevent something like this from becoming the absolute gold standard. So right there, for example, I'm healing up the pylon with my shield batteries, right? Which is ridiculous. There's a couple of ways that I think that this build can quite easily be prevented from happening. First off, let's talk about the requirement of the shield battery for just a second, right? So currently the requirement in order to build up a shield battery is just simply a gateway. If you have a gateway out, you can go ahead and start creating shield batteries, which, you know, seems fair enough. It at the very least makes some sense right there that you don't want to put it on the forge stack, because if you have it on the forge stack, obviously you end up, you know, being in a situation where a player can both go for a cannon rush, as well as a bunch of shield batteries, which is going to be very, very terrifying as well. Plus, it would probably make the early game defense for Protoss just a little bit too strong. I've been thinking about it for a little while, right? And I think it would make a lot of sense if they would put the requirement of the shield battery at cybernetics core tech instead. Since a lot of people are still going to be opening up with Gateway anyway into a Cyber Core, I mean, if you're going to go into a Gateway, you're definitely going to follow it up with a Cyber Core as soon as you possibly can. I think that would make a little bit more sense, because no one's really going to construct a shield battery to begin with before you get any kind of reasonable tech out anyway, right? Like, are you going to really, like, create a wall and then put shield batteries in there? Maybe, you know, a year from now, that's going to be the gold standard. But as it is right now in StarCraft 2, I don't think that is going to be an absolute necessity. So I think that having the shield battery at the cybernetics core tech makes a little bit more sense. Now, secondly, and this may be another option as well, and I don't think this is something that you want to, you know, I don't think you want to do like 2 nerfs to the building already, just because it seems a little bit ridiculous, but I do think that shield batteries should not be allowed to heal up other buildings as well. Like, at the very least, right, the fact that I could keep this pylon alive just by simply using the shield batteries here in the back, while the ones at the front are healing up all of my zealots, seems a little bit ridiculous, right? Because all things considered, even though I didn't micro this perfectly and I could have done it cleaner, and, you know, I you know, could definitely optimize the execution here a ton. I mean, look at that value right there. That is 5 zealots killed here for me in total, so 500 May have actually been 2 probes there somewhere as well. Anyway, a couple of zealots do end up dying there for me, as well as some other units, so 500 resources in total. But I ended up killing so much more than this was worth. And of course, you gotta keep in mind, spine crawls and whatnot are still gonna have to be added to that too. And really, all things considered, this seems to be like a build that is nearly unstoppable unless you scout it before the zealots get to your side of the map and before the pylon in the main finishes up. But then again, how are you gonna do that as a Zerg? I do think, though, if you are a Zerg player or a Terran player or a Protoss player for that matter, you should definitely consider opening up very safe right now in the balanced test map. For a Zerg, for example, going 14 gas, 14 pool, shut something like this down quite easily. But initially, going for builds that require like a very quick Nexus, for example, like a Nexus first, or a very quick command center, like a command center force, or going for a hatchery first as well, I think it may just be a little bit too greedy, because builds like this are popping out all over the place, and or builds like this are popping up all over the place, and I think that they're only going to become stronger, at the very least, for the next couple of weeks. Now, I wanted to go ahead and share this build with you, because, of course, I do have plans to create a ton more videos about StarCraft 2 in the new patch as well. So if you are interested, you know what to do. Make sure you hit that subscribe button down below so you get a notification as soon as I upload more. But for now, I want to thank you very much so for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile, alright? And I'll see you in the next one.